Nebraska chapter in 1985.
Well, congratulations on your initiation into our fraternity. You know, it's great fun to be here today. I was actually preparing for this, I realized that on February 20th, it'll be 30 years ago, that I sat with a group just like this for our initiation into this fraternity at Delta Upsilon. And it's a lot of fun day. I can't remember how many kids were there, probably about 20. And 3 of the 20 that sat up there with me 30 years ago are here tonight. Brother Rose and Brother Spencer are here 30 years after we did that. And went through the same ceremony it seems like a few short years ago. You know, I remember well, I believe Jack Gugamoss was the guy that gave the charge that day. Jack at the time was the Aurora High School football coach and later served as athletic director at Waverly High School. I believe that Jack still holds the record of being the most prolific DU rush chairman in history. He pledged 44 men during his term as rush chairman. So, Brother Eric Spencer, you've got your work wherever you are. You've got your work cut out for you to try to beat Jack's record of 44. Still a great DU today. Today begins your Delta Upsilon story. A story that brings with it opportunities and excitement that you really can't even imagine. Because you cannot look forward into your future to see what opportunities and excitement lies before you, I thought I'd share with you some of the opportunities that Delta Upsilon has provided me and my family. I'll summarize the impact that DU's had in my life in really 3 areas: relationships, personal development, and career opportunities. This fraternity has had a monumental impact on the life of my family. My Delta Upsilon story actually begins long before you or any of your parents were born. In the 1940s, my uncle, Gene Castner, was initiated into the Nebraska chapter of Delta Upsilon fraternity. Since then, my father was initiated, followed by my brother, 2 cousins, and one of my cousin's sons. For all my family, this fraternity has created a lifetime of relationships, personal development, and career opportunities that has exceeded our wildest imaginations. The best example of these personal relationships was experienced after the death of my Uncle Gene. He passed away in April of 2005. The next month, on the day that would have been my uncle's birthday, the phone in my office in Sydney rang, which normally have pretty good security, so I was surprised this call got through. But the man on the other end of the phone identified himself as Buck Barton. I'd never met him before and had no idea why he was calling me. He explained to me that he was looking for my Uncle Gene and knew that I was his nephew working in Sydney. Well, I had to explain to him that my uncle passed away the previous month. The anxiety I heard in the man's voice haunted me. He explained that every year, on each of his pledged brother's birthday, he called each of them to sing them happy birthday. This was almost 60 years after those gentlemen had the same experience that you're having today. The man was terribly distraught in losing one more member of that group of men to which he'd grown very, very close. These bonds that you gentlemen are forming today will endure to the same extent of my uncle and Buck Barton. These relationships will literally last a lifetime. I also have the same benefit with seeing the same thing happen in my father's pledge class. Growing up, we always had DUs visiting at our house and getting together socially. I'm sure most of you were put to bed with stories like Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. Well, I got put to bed hearing stories about Jimmy Kabaki hitting the winning basket against Nebraska when they beat #1 Kansas in 1958. 2 weeks after they'd lost in Lawrence, 102-46. Which up until 2 or 3 years ago, Jim will tell you, was still the worst loss ever in the history of Nebraska basketball. When I was considering a career in accounting and finance, my dad took me to visit Jim Hofstetter, the CEO of Tires Inc. in Omaha. My dad wanted to make sure I benefited from the experience of one of his fraternity brothers that was entering the same field that I was choosing. I've equally benefited from these relationships that I've formed as part of my fraternity. I'll give you a little bit of insight about relationships from a guy that's 25 plus years into his adult life. And called cynicism or just being a crotchety old guy, you'll never form the relationships like the ones you're forming these next 4 years. As you get older and you start balancing your career and families we have less time to build these relationships. Furthermore, as an adult, you actually get a little bit of skepticism about the motivation people have in forming these sorts of relationships with you. But you gentlemen are entering the best 4 years of your life to form these relationships. And I implore upon you to seize that opportunity. Get to know your fraternity brothers. Do things with them. You never in your life will have the opportunity that lies before you today. Please seize that opportunity. The friends that I've met through this fraternity are some of the best friends that I have today. I'm reminded of Brother Kruger when he and I were moving into the house. I mean, the guy would make me laugh so hard I would cry. And what he remembered about was moving into the house with him was the diversity of guys that we had before us in the fraternity house. Today I'm telling you, I know doctors, I know lawyers, I know farmers, we know a priest, the former voice of Nebraska football, the sports editor, the Lincoln Journal-Star, and the creative director of CNN. These guys are all guys in the house with us that we can call today and talk about our shared DU experience. Over the course of life, these will be your best friends in both the greatest achievements of your life and your greatest disappointments. The second opportunity this fraternity gives is the opportunity to develop yourself. This development will begin in your undergraduate years. There will be opportunities to develop yourself academically. When I was a DU, there was a small group of us that were accounting majors. And my two pledge brothers that are here will tell you I probably never would have got through accounting without their help. And during particularly tough times, we'd hole up in the powder room to study. Because everybody, you knew that was the one place you were free from interruption in the fraternity house. Of course, it got a little embarrassing, probably when Mrs. Spencer had to come and actually use the restroom or something. We all had to excuse ourselves so that she could actually take care of the intended use of that room. But it was a great place to study in those early years and learn about our classes. But in addition to academic development, there's obviously opportunity to develop your leadership skills. This fraternity will give you the opportunity to develop your skills and build leadership opportunities during a period of time when the consequences of failure are not nearly as great as they are when you're in the workforce. There are hundreds of examples of leadership responsibilities that you'll assume as part of your DU experience. I was treasurer of the house for 2 years. This opportunity gave me my first experience to manage a small business. Others of you will have the same opportunities. You'll be rush chairman, social chairman, pledge educator, or head of alumni relations, which I now appreciate is a much more important job than I understood when I was an undergrad. The benefit for you is that you'll have your first opportunity to take a meaningful leadership role with little adult supervision where the cost of failure is low. I encourage each of you to seize this opportunity and develop yourselves by assuming a leadership role in the chapter. The first 2 points that I made regarding relationships and opportunities are probably most eloquently stated by Brother Rose, and I didn't know that he was going to be here today when I stole his quote. But as part of the Rush brochure that I think Brother Sunderman put together for last year, he was quoted as saying, "DU helped me set goals, celebrate successes, and overcome disappointments." In other words, prepare me for life. But it's the relationships I was fortunate enough to build at 16th and Vine that mean the most to me and will last a lifetime. Throughout my life, my family's had countless career and business opportunities due to the relationships of this fraternity. The first of these was in the 1950s. My grandfather moved from Ashland to Sidney, Nebraska to start a bank. As part of the formation of the bank, he'd actually raised all the capital he needed to start the bank in Ashland, which was the community he was moving from, and he thought he was all set. Well, after he completed this and got ready to start the bank regulators informed him that a certain percentage of the capital had to be raised in the community the bank was being formed in, so he had a problem. But fortunately for him at the time, my uncle was a DU. And there were a lot of DUs in the house at that time from Sidney. So he went around and hit up the parents of all the DUs that were in the house back then from Sidney to start up the bank in Sidney. Now, all the parents that are here, I'm not going to hit you up afterwards to start a bank. But, you know, it was a great example of how those relationships really mattered. And he did get the bank started. And actually, it still exists in Sidney as Security First Bank. And they actually acquired a bank here in Lincoln. So when you see the Security First Bank signs, that was actually started by a bunch of DUs back in the 50s.
My first career benefit with that Delta Upsilon afforded me came as I was in college and began to interview for jobs in public accounting. When I interviewed with the firm that's now PricewaterhouseCoopers, the partner conducting the interview looked at me and said, "Well, you're Ralph Castner, I know you. I was treasurer of the DU House." And those sorts of relationships, clearly that made the interview go much better and put me at ease for the rest of the interview. A more recent opportunity occurred when I was at Cabela's, and I got a call from Brother Dave Spencer, and he wanted to enter into a marketing agreement between Cenex gas stations and Cabela's. So we kind of concocted this idea that if you took your Cabela's credit card into a Cenex station, it would double the amount of your rewards points that you got for using. As a matter of fact, Brother Nate Geiser and I, we had to stop at the Cenex station in Kearney on the way down here to fill up the gas. But that relationship between Cenex and Cabela's, unbelievably, has resulted in Cenex selling $100 million more gasoline, and us being able to award our cardholders $1 million in more points. But that's really enough of my DU experience and the experience of some of the guys in the room. I'd like to close by focusing on the group of the young men that are here before us today. 30 years from now, one or more of you will be given a charge to a similar group of the Nebraska chapter of Delta Upsilon assembled. What story will you guys have to tell? What accomplishments will you have? How will you have seized the opportunities that this fraternity presents for you? What opportunities will you have created for the brothers that follow you? I can't wait to hear your stories. Thank you very much.